Yeah. What's up, dudes? It's freezing out right now. It's like, I don't know, 7? Like minus 13 if you're talking in Celsius. I think tomorrow's going to get down about -5. That's Fahrenheit. That's some cold shit right there. Anyway, I wanted to, you know, got my little heater going here, trying to warm my hands up. And it's cold down here in the basement. But wanted to do the bending lesson. And so, you know, I've been thinking about it, and I think there's a few different approaches we can take. One is, get yourself a tuner. They're cheap. If you have any of the software, there's a tuner built into almost every software package. You can get one for your iPhone. You can buy one, just a clip-on. There's so many tuners out there now. You know, when I was younger, they were more expensive. Now they're cheaper. They're far more accurate. They're far faster than they used to be. Get yourself a tuner. And, you know, what you want to do is sort of, you know, hit a note. And another thing a tuner is good for is to know. That's actually a little... Listen to this note versus this note. That second note is actually a little sharper because I'm pressing a little harder. And a tuner will help you get your touch down a little bit better. Because if you're really pressing hard, you'll be sending notes out of tune. I hear that a lot when I hear players that are learning riffs for the first time, or, you know, really getting their chops together. They tend to grip the guitar a little bit tighter. And that will absolutely send notes out of tune. Here's a regular note. Here's the same note. Hear that difference? You know, it's subtle, but it's there. And certainly noticeable the more accurate your ear becomes. So there's a couple of ways to bend. A couple of rules about bending. Number one, and I'll break this rule later on, but number one, when you bend, you're bending to a specific note. It's not just... That's... Now it's... Right? This note here... or a half step. You're bending to a very specific note. It's not just some random, you know. And I think when I hear some of, I don't really have any students, but when I did many years ago, it almost seemed like when they were bending, it was just, well, push the string up, and that's bending. It's not. It's bending to specific notes. So to work on that, get a tuner, and when you bend, when you hit a G, it should read G on the tuner. And when you bend up to A, it should be A. That to me sounds like an A. That's another reason why people do vibrato. You do vibrato because you're sort of in A-ish. You don't have to be exact. And when people bend and they don't use a vibrato, you got to be dead on accurate. When you use a vibrato, you can waver around that tone and it still sounds okay. Vibrato, fast vibrato, doesn't sound good. That's your... It's like when singers, their vibrato is too fast. We call it billy goating. Right? You sound like a billy goat. Right? It's too fast. Vibrato is like Paul Stanley. You know. So you really want to get a nice smooth vibrato. George Lynch will do a real wide vibrato, and you know that works too. But again, it's not super fast. It's right, that real slow wavering vibrato. So for bending, and it's interesting because I've shown this to a few buddies of mine, And they're like easy peasy until they try and do it, and then it gets a little bit more difficult. So to get sort of it under your fingers, right? Say you take a D and bend to E, look at it on a tuner. See, even there it sounds like I was a little flat. And look at it on the tuner and see that you're getting right to that E. And a little riff that I've shown a few friends of mine, and they're like, oh, I'll do that, and then they realize how tricky it is to go. So I'm just going E, G, A, 12, 15, 17. So I slide one and then I bend the other, you know. Another thing you can do is, if you're bending this note, it's D, and you're bending it up to E. Well, now you're getting to this note, that E. So if you do them together, you can hear it go out of tune. In tune, and it really gets your ear developed for that. To do a half note bend, I like to go. Which is basically that Van Halen riff. So, so that's 7, 8, 7, 5, 7. The last 7 is on the D string. It's all on the G string except for the last note, which is on the... So, G string, 7, 8, 7, 5. And then 7 on the D string. Alright, so... Just keep doing that. For a whole step, I like to... You know, bending from that E, G, A. Shot it there a second. Let's see. Right, that's working your ear out. I'm trying to get you to hear those notes. And notice that when I bend, I'm really using two fingers. 2. Because my third, just by itself, is harder. So I'm using those 2 because it's easier. And I rarely bend with my 4th. I sometimes... Then I almost use like all of them. And when I'm bending, I'm not pushing up with my fingers. I'm sort of locking my hand and rotating. And same with vibrato. It's not like this, it's like that. It's a rotation. Right? So that, and see what the another thing about bending is when you're on the top 3 strings, E, G, B, G, I'm always pushing up. When I'm on D, I might start to go down, maybe up, but now I'm starting to grip the fingerboard. When I'm on A, it's always down. Same with B. There's no way to go this way. It's got to go down. When I'm bending on the low strings, I tend to use my second finger because it's stronger. And when I'm bending with my first finger, index, it's almost always down. Because I just don't have as much control going up. So lock it on, and I'm rotating my hand. Now, listen to a whole step away. It's almost like a little bit of a subtle bend. I don't even really finish it out. Oh, Miles Davis for you there. So when I'm doing that, right, and I also notice that when I'm bending, I get my action. If your action is too low, it becomes a little bit trickier. You want your action up just a hair, so that when you bend, you're getting the tips of your fingers are on, the string is on the front of the tips, and you're pushing it out of the way. You're clearing room for the bend. If they all get underneath, they slip under. And so I find that when the action is too low and the frets are too low, right, because they sort of work hand in hand. You can have really low action if you have a scalloped fingerboard or super jumbo frets, because it's easy to dig your finger down in that space between the frets and really get a hold of it and push those other strings out of the way. When your action is super low and your frets are super low, the strings are going to slip under your finger and they're going to accidentally ring out. So you really want to get them up so that they're on the tip of your finger and you're pushing them out of the way, right? So here's the string, and you want to push that string out of the way. You don't want it too low because it's going to slip under your finger and it's going to ring out and it's going to sound sloppy, right? So you really want a decent action, not too high, but certainly not too low. Some of the worst playing I've seen was when guys, they come in and they've set their action like super, super low, and then it's actually a little harder to play. I think there's a fallacy about super low action. After it gets too high, you start to push strings out of tune and all that. If you really want to work on bending and all that stuff, get a guitar with a scalloped fingerboard. That'll force you to play lightly, and you'll have plenty of room to do bends. You know, that's a beast. It becomes a bit of a beast to work with. So that's a little something about that. I think, what else? Sometimes I'll bend, I'll hit a note and I'll bend behind that. So I'll do like a tapping. Right, and I'm bending from that D up to that E. People seem to like that one. You know, Randy used to do that. He'd go like, it's kind of the same concept. I'm pulling a bend behind this trail. Of course, with floating tremolos, it's easier just to do it and pull up, so that it's not as common to see it done like this, except if you have a stop tailpiece. I purposely use this guitar with a stop tailpiece because I didn't want to complicate things with a tremolo. So work on things like this. Right, working on getting your ear in shape, getting your fingers sort of in shape, and then like and your vibrato at the same time. Another thing about vibrato is you can do it on multiple strings. You don't have to just do it on a single string. And I find that when you do it, it's almost like, I remember a great story on Baryshnikov years ago, and he used to do the pirouettes, and when he was really in practice and had practiced a lot, his pirouettes were like glass. I mean, just like he was ice skating. They were just perfect. But when he was out of practice, he stuttered. He just, you know, he was choking a little bit. I think vibrato's the same way. I think that when you practice a lot, your vibrato gets nice and smooth, and when you don't, it gets a little bit, you know, a little more disjointed. Right. So, what you don't want to do is sound like, you know, you used to have guys who would come in the store and they'd be like, we would just be dying like, oh man. It sounded so cool to work in the music store until, you know, you had to deal with maybe 1 out of 100 good players and everyone else was just learning, you know, just starting out. So you had to suffer a lot of cacophony throughout the day. So anyway, I hope that helps. Getting a tuner, looking at the tuner, moving to a note, holding it in that spot, that'll get your muscles down and sort of get your ear trained at the same time. Doing riffs, repeating that riff with a bend. You could do it with any scale. Pick a scale and work it up vertically, not horizontally, vertically, on one string. And then go back and do the same thing, except for each note. You know. Bend to that note. That'll work your ear out, and it will work your hands out. And you'll get used to the kind of pressure you need for a whole step and the kind of pressure you need for a half step. And once in a while you do ones that are even higher. So work on those later. I'd get the whole steps and the half steps down. Another one that I do a ton of, and we'll finish it up with this, is so I'm always going to this E. Which has been used in 1,000 tunes. I think it's basically the opening line to but since I've been letting you. So I'm bending from D to E, and I'm hitting this E, so I'm sort of tying it all in. You're getting that repetition. So one's static and one's bent to. Open string noise there, but I think you get the idea. I should practice myself once in a while. All right. You hear that little bend? That's like what I would call a, not a micro bend, but basically it's like an embellishment bend, right? I'm not bending to any note. It's almost like a harmonica bend, right? Because they would bend in and out of notes. That takes more time. I would stick with the whole step and the half step first. That'd be a good place to start. All right, guys. I think that's it for now. Stay warm. It's supposed to hit, I think, in my area, I don't know, about 0 to -5 tomorrow. I'm going to have a good stiff wind of about 20-25 miles an hour, so should get down about 20, 21 below, and that's Fahrenheit. What's 0? About 17 below in Celsius. So, it's chilly. All right, guys, rock on.